Caitlin, the next one, if you like to do the
the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adjustments to the agenda, keeping in mind that this is a special meeting. Okay, before we do communication and public comments, I would ask that anyone that has public comments limit their presentation to 2 minutes. So is there anyone?
I don't see anyone online. Dave here, so not just Dave, but
Okay. Approve the minutes from December 5, December 19, January 3, January 9.
we have not gotten December 5th.
Okay, so we're postpone December 5th. Any corrections to December 19? Okay. Seeing none, I will approve those minutes as written. Any corrections to January 3? Okay, seeing none, I'll approve those as written. Corrections to January 9. I have one correction in Susan Small here. We need to correct her spelling of her name. Seeing no other corrections, I'll approve those as corrected. Principals report. Let's start with Saxon's River this time.
I don't have mine pulled up because I sent it to you, so I thought I didn't realize we were delivering a report, so
Is there-
hold on just 1 second.
Is there anything additional that you would like to add? Let's do it that way.
There is not, but thank you for asking, and I'm happy to give an oral report if you'd like, or I know that time was short.
Anything brief that you'd like to comment on?
Today's responsive classroom training for the 2nd and 3rd grade group at Saxon's River was fantastic. We had an excellent facilitator, Caltha Crow, who is a responsive classroom practitioner and fantastic facilitator, as I said, and it was great. It's great that all teachers have received similar information, and then we can work within our buildings to just enhance and bring that to each room within our school.
Okay. Thank you. Carrie?
I think
Okay.
I just had 2 questions on the report.
Okay, go ahead.
Saxon Village.
Sure.
Laura, what I first read about ILT
Yep.
as an instructional leadership team.
Yep.
How many people are on that?
It varies from school to school, but in our school, there are 4 people. Myself and 3 teachers, 2 classroom teachers and an interventionist.
Okay, and I understand that they've been focusing on comprehension, on reading and speaking.
Yeah, so that each school was tasked to come up with their own targeted learning focus, given the data. And in our school, our focus is comprehension through writing and speaking. So we want students to be able to understand, but we also want them to be able to communicate what they know in writing or orally.
Okay. This question doesn't have to do with writing or speaking, but reading. I was curious, do you have silent reading at Saxon's River on a daily basis?
We don't have like the traditional like drop everything and read, or SR, what it used to be called SR time. Yeah. We have within reading workshop, a reading workshop model. Sometimes if students are able to independently read, independent reading can be one component. The question is, are they really reading, right? So that's what you always have to make sure that they are reading. And one way to verify that they're reading is have them express, whether in writing or orally, what they've read.
But you don't have silent group reading even in the upper grades.
Within readers workshop time, there is often, not always, an independent reading time, but we do not have a dedicated time throughout the building of science, sustained silent reading. That's what it used to be. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Yes.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions from the board? Okay, Carrie?
I think our just big shout out, similar to Laura about the PD today. We did share about our Smarty Bowl things too in our report, but just a big shout out to the PTCO for sponsoring our New Hampshire Dance Institute residency that we had last week. It was fantastic. We had our show last Thursday. Back TV recorded it, and but we really appreciate the support from the PTCO for coming for that and giving our students a chance to dance all week long. So it was fabulous. So.
Yeah, it's super presentation.
She loves it.
Any questions for Karen?
Just that, Terry, do you have also an ILT?
Instructional leadership team, we do. Yes, I have 4 teachers with me on that team.
Okay. Thank you. What was the focus?
Ours is, I'll read it too. The whole thing is students will improve their reading comprehension through speaking and reading and writing. And then our kids student friendly term is read to know, write to show, and speak to grow.
Sketching.
Yeah. Sure.
And if I may, I'll just bring up, every school in our SU has an ILT. It's a supervisory union initiative. The middle school, and Henry can speak to it a little bit, was put on pause during the administrative changeover, and so he's been working with the consultant on bringing that up to speed. So
Okay.
they're probably behind where the other 2 buildings are.
All right, thank you.
And Henry is here with us. So.
Yes.
Any other questions for Karen?
Just, I'm sorry, I did not receive a copy of your report for some reason.
Oh, I think it was attached to the,
I don't know.
attached it to what-
Yeah,
You
we
would send.
did, and maybe we'll resend it to you. I apologize. I don't know. Nicole repackaged it from what I
Okay.
did, so.
Okay.
I didn't see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, I'll shoot it to you right now, but you sent it to me.
oh, that's all right.
Henry?
Yeah, so I don't have anything new to add other than the report I already sent over. But as far as our ILT team goes, we're actually meeting tomorrow with Brett Bishop after school from 3 to 4:30. I have 5 teachers other than myself on our team, and it is kind of a little bit of a transition at the middle school. We did go on a pause for a little while, with actually tomorrow being the date we're resuming. So we are a few steps behind both Central and Saxons River, but starting tomorrow, we're gonna get caught right back up. So that's kind of the plan.
Any questions for Henry? Yeah, no.
Hi, Henry.
Hey.
I'm curious what the protocol is. If a parent calls the front office and has a concern about their student,
Mhm.
where does that phone call? Is there a message that's taken, and who eventually gets that message?
Yeah, so that's correct. There is a message that's taken either from Sierra or Jen. And it all depends on who it's directed to. Normally it's coming in my direction. But there are obviously calls for Carrie Newton now, who's acting dean, as she's been, active in the process with contacting a few parents here and there as far as, as we work through discipline and consequence and stuff like that together. So I guess it depends on where it needs to go. But most of the time I would say it comes to me.
And if it's a serious enough case that requires immediate attention, do you try to get back to the parent the same day?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes. If it's brought to my attention, I try my best to prioritize everything that, is brought to me or is brought to the table in any given day. And I will do my best in that day, obviously, to get to the more important situations first.
All right, so you do call the parent back.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yep.
All right, thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions for Henry? Okay, if not, old new business. We had a donation that we put off to accept to
We have
this
finance.
meeting. Oh, I
Sorry.
skipped finance. I'm sorry. I apologize, Tim. Finance. Well, I was
No,
thinking budget stuff. So do you have something in addition to the budget that you want to
I
address?
do.
And it has a segue right to the budget.
Good,
I wanna,
thank you.
so I wanna say I should look this weekend. Long weekend, huh?
Yes.
I took a look this weekend, and I don't know why I didn't do this before. But I've intertwined all of the Rockingham expenditures. And you'll see the object is on page 2 and the function is on page 17. But this intertwines all of the, and it gives, I just think it gives you a different view to look at. Not that it, sometimes it's just nice to get the bigger picture, and I think that's what this gives you. So that's just for some light reading later on.
So this is all the schools combined into, as if it were just one big entity.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Just okay. So that was the first look I had.
So in preparation for showing us where the figures on it, on the budget sheets are.
Yes.
Great, this is wonderful. Thank you, Jim. Any questions? Okay. All right, then let's move to the donation. It was mentioned at our last meeting and to be put on for this one, so. Right, if you could inform us about that, please.
Yeah, so, and this has happened each year that I've been here. And it comes from River Charities Incorporated, via Salmon and Nostrum. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly, their law office. And, they represent River Charities Incorporated, and, they have, given Saxon's River $2,000, in support of our activities fund.
For your which fund?
Activities
Your
fund.
activity fund. Okay. Could I have a motion, please, to accept the donation for Saxon's River? Okay. Bill Morse has moved that we accept the $2,000 for the activity fund from the River Charities. Is there any discussion?
Out of curiosity, where will the $2,000 go as far as talking about?
So the plan is to deposit it in our student activities account, and that is used for a variety of things. It's used to bring residencies to our schools, sometimes field trips, sometimes to help with scholarships if students can't, or families, need some support paying for like winter sports or participation in some sort of activity.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, if not, Jim, how do you vote?
We're all here, we'll just.
Oh, we can just, yeah, we're all actually all in
Okay,
attendance
all
this time, great, we can just vote aye if you're in favor, or, so all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, then it has passed unanimously. All right, for the fiscal year 24 discussion and anticipated approval of budget, so discussion of the budget. Any questions relevant to changes, any explanation on the changes, anything?
So I'll make a motion to start the discussion off.
Thank you.
So. So this, when the Jim just, that's why Jim just gave us. What I should do.
No, I
Jim, are you two, and two, where's the?
Yes.
Okay. Where's the pig?
because I have them right here.
Using the meters.
Okay,
So I move to approve the Rockingham School District fiscal year 2024 budget. And figure of $10,246,454.
Chris has made the motion that we approve the Rockingham School District to approve the budget of $10,246,454. So is there discussion?
I have a couple of items. Nothing is that substantive. In the central budget, under general education, the big one. What page is this?
The 28, that the, you said the big
28,
one, so I'm just
yeah.
making that assumption.
Yeah, if you look at page 28. Okay. Included in that 1.172 million is a contracted service of $85,000, which is listed as a behavioral support 504. Okay. Then when you look down to also on that page to psychological services for 116,000. There also is a contracted service for 85,000. Which is HCRS is listed under Jim's detail, which is very helpful, by the way. And I just want to be sure that the 85,000 might just be the coincidence here. But I just want to be sure that we're not double counting the 85.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna ask
That's a
Carrie
good
to
catch.
speak to that because,
That should be, and I believe Jim did move it up to the HCRS, which. Let me go back to that line item to make sure. Because one part is for potential behavior interventionists, which would not be 80,000. The 80,000 though was for potentially, so we have school-based clinician and the salary basically shared with special ed. And so that you're correct. It should not be in both line items. Let me double check.
Yeah, it's a big enough number. You don't want to just.
Sure,
take it
no, I
out.
appreciate that.
But I know earlier in our discussions, there was a couple of areas where we kind of double counted. But this one does say in the detail, 504 for one and HCRS psychological services for the other. So I just
so a contracted psychological service for a school-based clinician would not be $85,000, but if there is a contracted also for a behavior interventionist, those two positions could potentially add up to 85,000.
Correct.
I would just ask you to double check that
Sure.
they're both
That's fair.
belong where they are.
No, that's a fair request.
So what do we want to do though, as far as finalizing the budget, Jim?
I'd go ahead and finalize the budget myself, and I think if it's a double count, then we've got a little
Sure.
little excess in your budget there.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
But I think I wouldn't hold up the process at this stage.
Okay, thank
The
you.
other area, I had a couple of questions, two questions. And it's probably staffing, but it's Saxon's River. They note that on the health insurance,
What page, please?
page 57. The salary appears to be up 14.4%, and I'm just curious as to what was the dynamic there. between the 2023 budget and the 2024 budget.
Am I referencing the 46,000 to the 52?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, it's driven by step and track. And it was a settlement, and again, I don't know if it's a new person or not in that.
Is this specific to our nurse? I'm
This is
just
the
making
nurse
sure I'm
budget.
looking at I'm looking on 57, the very top line is what you're looking at, correct? There's
That's
not
correct.
been a change in staffing, and I don't know if she has shifted columns or not. That would be,
So that's a
Was it the
master's,
same person, Lord?
it is, yes.
the
I-
master's plus 15. And for next year, that salary,
So that could be
but it's
it was-
also,
I mean, the salary.
it's also a master's plus 5. Or a master's with a step 5. So, without pointer contract, I couldn't tell you what step she's on. It's also a bachelor's plus 30 because there's that waterfall.
But it could be a change in their educational.
A shift in the
Credential.
column,
It,
yeah.
it could be that she did some schooling and so therefore she needs the whole column.
Okay,
I just want to say on page 71, 3/4 of the way down is where salary and benefit for that.
although it jived with this,
Yeah,
you know, your budget and your numbers on 71 were the same. So it's just, it's the level of increase. And that's my other question, which is with regards to the Saxons River custodians. There appears to be 11.1%. I don't think anybody went from master's 5 to master's 15 on that one, but it worked out to an 11% increase, and I'm just,
I think that had to do with the agreement. Remember, your office had gone through all of the para support staff contracts at the end of the year last year. I think that's what it had to do with.
Yeah, they're, I don't recall exactly, but there had to, once the set of the contract had been settled with the support staff, there was a need to go back and review all the contracts because they were potentially not done correctly and there were errors and they had to be righted. So that might be a piece of that is adjusting that to reflect where the person truly is, because what had happened, Jigs, and I've been coming back, there had been miscounting at some times of a person's years of service. So, and then also if a person, part of the settlement was if a person had been with us a significant amount of time, there was a jump in longevity pay. And so there was so you might see a large jump if the person has been with us for a significant period of time. So again, without pulling that specific person.
all right. That sounds reasonable.
And there are 3 paras at Saxon River.
We have 3 504 paras and 2 special ed paras.
Okay, so is that an increase too, or is that?
No, the increase in the proposed budget, no, no.
Jim, did you have more questions?
That's it.
Okay.
I think it's interesting if you look at that, the 3 buildings basically are up like 465,000 combined total increase in the 3 buildings. The difference between that and the 548,000 is the tuition that we pay for preschoolers to go to other programs. Less or plus, in this case, it's less. Our SU assessment, we're actually down $34,000 year to year. Less or increase our debt service, which is another less. Our interest expense is down in the coming year from this year. So the total of those three is about $83,000. And that brings us up to the 548,000.
Yeah. The increase, the health insurance increases are tremendous too this year, so that's been a lot. Like adding
Health.
the way that's negotiated by the state. And so some of that has caused a big change.
I would say that if you were going to try to simplify it, I'd say there's three major contributors. One is the errors that had been made in the previous budget. It's a fairly big number. For example, 150 wasn't figured in last year. Okay. Obviously, the salary increases from the contract settlement and the health insurance. Health insurance hit us big time this year, not so much because of more staff. It's just that the combination of people opting into the program that might not have been in the program before, and the absolute increase in the premium. So those are the three biggies, which should be, well, I guess the two of them should be no surprise. The errors, of course, we would hope not to perpetuate in the future.
If I may add also, just as you pointed out, those three big areas, we also know we have large increases in utilities that are being absorbed in this budget, so that it's not, pushing it up tremendously high. So I think that, the principals did make an effort to try and find ways to maintain what we have without, and knowing that we had challenges with those utilities, with oil and electricity, and wood chips are going up, everything's going, all those things are going up. I mean, we budgeted oil last year. At this time last year, oil was, we almost could give it away, and obviously so much happens in a year. So I just wanted to note that.
I think also one thing that should be noted, because I think our staff has been really good about looking at ways that they might be able to conserve, is to realize that the bottom line that they are proposing right now, if you look at last year's budget 2022, which was the educational spending, we are still coming in 500,000 under what it was back 2 years ago. And some of that, a lot of that was errors in the business office and the way they counted.
350 of that is the contribution that we got from last year's survey.
No, the 350 comes off after our 10,246. So the received budget, the spending that's at the top level is 500,000 down from 2022. It's up some from the 2023 budget, because we realized last year when we were doing the budget that the year before had been so high that we cut it by a substantial amount, about $1 million. But this year is back up a little because of all the increases, the utilities, like you pointed out, the salary, the health, the errors, all of that. The 350,000 comes off after the 10,246,000.
But it's up 548,000.
From the current year, but not from the previous year. From the previous year, it's down. If you look at your comparison across on page 86. You get your actual received Now your proposals. So we're down from that, which. That year, which is what's going to impact our surpluses too, because we're looking at that huge budget from 2022 with a lot of surpluses. And that's why, because it was so much higher. Yes,
I just
Jim.
want to say, the budget is up 548,000
This
from
year's,
last year.
not this year's. The current
Yes,
year.
from this year's. And $290,000 increase in just the health insurance alone. I mean, that's substantial.
Huge.
So half the increase is a result of what we've got given to us by the Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Okay, so
What was it?
we want to go from here. Bill?
Guys, me a five questions. Why are there two booklets? I see an operational budget, which is short form and then.
This is just
80
the consolidated.
So
This is
the
pretty
bigger,
low.
the bigger version that you have with the tabs is
Yeah.
broken out by school.
Yeah,
The version that he just handed out at the beginning of the meeting
yes,
is all the schools combined as if they were one budget.
okay.
So,
So it just gives you a different view of the overall budget.
All right. So Saxon's River and Central are asking for a 6% increase in their budgets. Correct?
no,
Over this year. Not 6% increase?
No,
I'm trying to figure out the increase per building.
okay, the increase for the middle school is $301,000. Okay,
What percent roughly is that?
it's about a 10% increase.
Now, so the middle school is asking for a 10% increase over the current operating budget.
No, the budget, yeah, the 2023 budget.
Right, is it?
Central is up 68,000. And that's about a 3%.
3%.
And Saxon's River is up 95,000. And that's about a 5.5% to 6% increase.
All right, 6%. Okay, it's like that, they go with that. All right, thanks.
but that percentage number just above the number pertains to the increase in all the numbers above.
Okay.
So it where it says, like on line 64, it says total building expense as percentage of budget. So that 6% pertains to the increase in building expenses.
All right, thank you. I understand. And so this is figured into the 12% increase, or $548,000. And as Jim said, most of that is health insurance increase, also utilities increase, and of course contractual increases in salaries, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
The other piece, Bill,
sure.
As in this budget, there we had tuition costs, and that was 150,000, so that's an error that we corrected.
And that's the universal pre-K dollars that is paid. That we are Rockingham or any district is responsible to pay to independent
Daycare service.
daycare or preschool. Yeah, high quality. Thank you, Chris. High quality, not anybody. But so if a child is not enrolled in our programming, but goes somewhere else, we pay 10 hours towards that, and it's a fixed amount, and off the top of my head, I want to say it's 1,700, but it might be that.
It's 3,000.
46.
So are we saying that this $150,000 is not in this budget?
It was not, it's not in our current budget.
Oh, okay.
We corrected it, so that's why
Not
it's
in current
part of that
budget.
increase.
All right, thank you. The other thing is. How much of this are we gonna be passing along to taxpayers?
If you
We've
look
got
at-
a $548,000 increase.
If-
How much of that will we be passing along?
If you look at page 87, Bill,
87.
87, this is what Jim told me was that line over is what,
87, line 4. Spending Rockingham. So we're passing along a $336,000 increase to the taxpayers.
from the current budget, which the current budget is actually down from last year, so the current budget, we're passing, we're increasing it from this year, yes.
So when we go and we ask for, we talk this up at the town meeting. We're going to be telling people that our budget, they're going to have to come up with $336,000 in additional property tax.
It's
Right.
much more complicated when they don't have an answer.
And keep in mind, 150,000 pre-K and the 290,000 health insurance is even more than that, so.
That's not his
Yeah.
question. The question is the ultimate answer to your question is what happens to our tax rate?
Yeah, what's
We
the
just
increase
don't
of
have all the
decrease?
data.
Right,
And many of these factors have affected our tax rate. For instance, just looking at that page. So when education spending goes up, line 4. That's an upward pressure on your taxes. When the number of equalized pupils drops. That's line 6. That's an upward pressure on your tax, because it's a divisor used in the formula. So you can see on line 7, currently, as Jen has got it calculated, our ed spending per equalized pupil is up $1,686.
Yes.
Then, just to make things really happy, the CLA, or the common level of appraisal, which is the calculation the state makes for each of the towns in the state, as to how accurate appraisals are compared to the actual selling prices of houses, has dropped down to 83.45%. That's another negative force on property taxes in this formula, the magic of this formula. So it's not only our bottom line, you're right about that, the increase in spending, but there are other forces, and the legislature in its closing hours will set the tax rate this spring. That they're gonna charge us, what do they call it, the base?
Oh, the yields.
The yield, set the yield. And so we don't know what they're going to do with that.
How is this CLA determined? Who determines?
It's a calculation.
The state is the upper. And
And so,
it's based on real estate sales versus your assessed values.
so the assessed values in Rockingham, according to the state formula, have gone down almost 8%.
They're below, they haven't gone down, they're below the market value of the market's value of real estate.
The prices of houses have gone up.
Yeah. And
That's
so
what
our
it
assessed
means.
values have stayed the same, so it's just a complicated, it'll be what it'll be, but I think
And when does the state set the tax rate? Roughly?
when they have to.
And the last, usually it's the last possible
The
minute.
gavel is going down like this. Right.
So I'm just curious, roughly when will we have a figure as far as how it's going to break out across local tax contribution to this budget?
Oh, we gotta
Sometime
have,
in February?
we're gonna have a number for March, the town meeting.
Yeah, exactly. That's why
We're
I'm
not
thinking.
voting on the tax rate, though, that's what you're voting on the budget. In
Voting on the
fact,
budget.
the tax rate won't be set until well after that.
That's right.
Oh, so it's a while come
Yeah.
after the fact. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah, they said it really late. I mean, you have to know before you start paying taxes in August.
Although they've already made a recommendation,
Right.
but who makes that the state?
Somewhere between 3.5 and 8.5, I think, somewhere between there is what they're predicting it'll come out to be. So,
The tax sheet is the best guess, that's.
Okay, thank
I just want to say. All of the stuff that your 3-year average thing I'm working on. Or that you have in your. That has the homestead educational tax. And just keep in mind. That's a smaller percentage. Than the non-homestead tax piece, which. What's it gonna be? I mean, there's no calculations really on the 3-year. Piece with that, so. Yeah, I just think it's
They're starting to talk about the legislature having a different tax rate for second homes.
yes,
I know, as opposed to rentals. Other good property.
And then there's discussion on moratorium on Airbnbs and, or, you know, so.
Yeah. So if you follow that down, Bill, if you
Yes.
look at there's some indications of what this budget has to do with, your increase in tax rates at the bottom of that page. Line 36, I know is one that has been pointed out to me before, that's saying it's about, based on this is hopefully 1.2%, but that again, it all depends on your figures and all of
All right,
that.
thank you,
So,
Christelle. I'm seeing this now.
you know, so all of that is important. So we have a motion on the floor for the budget figure of 10,246,454. Do we need more discussion or are we ready to vote on this?
I have a question also as you
Sure.
were doing this. So, for when you were talking about the 85,000, if it was perhaps a double count, what would happen if it turns out that somebody who is in 2 lines, it goes to a surplus that then is just part of the budget and you don't spend everything in every line of the budget from year to year, so that would be.
it would be returned in the following year as surplus.
Or if there
Unless
was a
it's
leverage
used
elsewhere.
somewhere else where it's needed, because this is just a budget. We're doing the best we can.
Yeah.
For each line, lines can fluctuate and change slightly.
And I think the commitment we can make to the board is if we identify that, we will notify the board and that line can be watched so that, you know, out of full transparency, not wanting to, you know, that we're trying to
Oh, yeah.
use the money in some other way type of thing, but that you're aware that that money's sitting there.
Okay. Any other questions before we vote? Okay, so, ready to vote? Jim, how do you vote?
Oh, here.
Oh, okay, but since it's a
Yes,
important thing. I was doing it, but if you would prefer that way, we could vote via acclamation. That would be fine. How does the board vote?
right.
Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So the budget is set for $10,246,454.
I'd like to say thank you to the board and thank you to the principals. But thank you to Jim and Zena for helping us through this and putting this together. It's been just amazing working with him, putting this together, and his knowledge and stewardship has been great. So thank you, Jim.
Okay, so next is warnings and articles. The warnings and articles thing I'm told did not get in there, so these were the ones I was gonna, since you were handed to me before the meeting, I started passing them out before. But anyone that doesn't have a copy, they can. At this point.
No, I don't.
Jake's didn't have one, he wanted to wait till we pass them out during the time on the motion on warrants.
Now, I had asked that we had where we are from our last year's votes. What do we have? What do we have pending here?
We have,
I'm asking.
from the sheet that we were given out, you were given a sheet with those funds on there. In one of our, through the board, in our packets, you should have the unassigned amount, which was $2,179,035.
I'm asking for the, before we deal with the 2 million circles, where do we stand as we go into this budget year? What's our existing surplus? How is it allocated? I know we've got a couple of funds. One is for real estate, small amount. One's for capital. And then we've spread money over the 2025, 26, I don't know, 27. But what are those numbers?
Okay, you have 100,000 for property.
So the only
We have-
authority here is Priscilla.
Well, I'm going by the last year's warnings.
Okay,
If
what's the
you want me to
capital?
do that.
What's the capital budget? What's the capital reserve?
The capital reserve that's on the sheet here is 620,000.
No, but we added that. We added that.
Okay, and last
what
year we
already
added-
had. It went up to a million or something.
Okay, so, and last year, the voters approved 100,000 for the property possibility. They voted 350,000 for 2024, 350,000 for 2025, 350,000 for 2026, 350,000 for 2027, 200,000 for 2028, and $315,156.44 for the capital reserve.
Okay, so the 315 added to the what, 600 or something?
620.
620, 315. We got about a $935,000 capital reserve.
Right.
And Andy, this is something we should have as we start this process, okay?
Which with the cost of things,
And the,
it's good to have a good amount in the capital reserve.
and what is the surplus that we've got to the 2022 surplus? What is that?
The auditor today was holding back, and that's the only thing that I've received to date. He said Thursday, he plans on having some final figures. He says, I'm sorry, but I didn't get all of the stuff completed that I had to.
We had a preliminary number, 2 million.
2,179,935.
Okay, that's the 2022.
Right.
And we don't have the WNESU surplus.
No,
Do you have any preliminary numbers?
no,
You must have.
no, I don't, you really.
We thought we were getting them today and,
Yeah.
and they weren't ready to
A little
provide.
disappointed. A little disappointed today that I didn't have, because I would have loved to have hit, approximately where I.
Well, but like I say, is it bigger than 100,000? Is it 500? You must have some kind of a rough
Sure, I think you're gonna be well in the 600.
for the WNESU.
Yeah.
And Rockingham is roughly 45% or something like that.
Right.
And with that money. Go back to the. Sort of a two-step process, go back to the issue of membership. I mean, I know it comes. The assessments are reduced by that.
Yes.
But it will be. When? By next year, is it?
I had asked him when I talked with him last week. I said, look, want to zero out the 22 SU budget. Over the weekend, I was thinking, I said, what in the June, no cash. I said, federal funds, I mean, we're burning probably $350 a month for federal funds. So there may be a little bit of a snafu in that. And I'm not sure, there may be a way if we can, modify maybe the assessment piece to where July 1, if it's possible to get more than just 1 month of assessment paid, maybe it'll work out. And maybe that's where we want to head anyways. Yeah.
The reason I'm saying that is that one of the theories that I have is to take the Rockingham piece and apply it to the 2024 budget. One would just, okay. It doesn't change the budget, but it changes how much we're gonna pass on to the taxpayer. And it cleans it up in the year following. I think that's a good practice to have. And if it's around 600,000, we might have 250,000 or something that we would additionally add to the 2024 calculation of tax. And then that would leave the full 2,180,000 for the articles. So anyway, that's my thought. I think we should get the number. I think we should apply the number in the 2020.
I think though, since it's surplus, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but if it's surplus, the voters have to vote on it. So it has to be some way that the voters can vote on it, because surplus is their money.
And I just want to say this for what I know. The surpluses, if you do not use them or designate, it will automatically, when I say automatically, it goes back to reduced taxes.
So it would, without doing anything,
Yes.
it would accomplish what you're asking
Correct.
right now.
Yeah.
As
And
long-
I can get a ruling on that if you'd like.
Yeah,
with the
I
council.
think it's better to get
I mean, we don't have that figure to sort of try and do the warrants. Well,
right. And it doesn't affect, as I said, it doesn't affect the budget, but it will affect the calculation sheets. And I think it's, and as Chris said, it really, the Rockingham budget, which we vote, okay, we only vote the assessment that Andy and Jim has given us from the SU, okay? The SU budget, if there's a surplus, then it's returned to the 5 different entities. And if it's a deficit, we have to fund it.
Right.
In the following year. So I think that we don't have to get taxpayer approval of the WNESU surplus for deficit.
So
But the
that's
2,180,000 we have to allocate.
Well, another approach.
Yep.
Would, I think we mentioned, somebody mentioned last time, is to an article that said to use up to X amount of things. One set. Cost and, but not necessarily, it doesn't mean you have to use it. I mean, if your scenario came true, I mean, there's 2 ways forward. I mean, we could wait a week or so, 3 days. We could wait. The articles until 3 days have passed, come back and approve the set of articles. Maybe the things same to do. But
All right, maybe I'm not going
or we could do something that's sort of has an out like that, where we have an article where we say up to such an amount of the surplus may be allocated, but then we have to kind of explain to everybody why we did that.
which is easier to give you a set amount and you'll be happy with it. I think at this point, I mean, we're looking at $2,179,935. I think if we allocate that, and then if we need to do something on the other ones, they found out something and we could figure out what we can do about that. Does that sound reasonable or?
Well, it doesn't hurt talking about the 2 million. Right? I mean, I've got a proposal. I would, we've got 350 set aside for 25, 26, 27, and 200 for 28. I'd round 25, 26, and 27 up to 500,000. I'd add 150 to each of those. I'd add 300 to the 28, make that 500,000. I'd make 29 and 30, 500,000. And the roughly 430,000 that's left, I'd add it to the capital reserve.
Okay, so Jim.
I like writing.
Run those numbers
Just-
again.
just-
Can
Okay,
you just
so
run those numbers again? So I was trying to write them down.
25 to 150, 26, 150, 27, 150, 28, 300, 29, 500, and 30, 500. And then I would take the, and 129,000 or the 429,935, if that's the right number, and add it to the existing capital reserve.
I like your proposal from one standpoint, Jim. What I would do instead is though I would do, because we're talking about 550 difference this year, I would go for 200,000 in 25, 200,000 in 26, 200,000 in 27, 350,000 in 28. That gets them all up to 550,000. I would do either 350,000 for 29 or 550,000, which would put either 679 or 879,935 in capital reserve. That way you've got 1, 2, 3, you've got 4 years at 550,000. And then you've got some for the next year where we could do additional surpluses in the years ahead and apply it to that if we needed to.
I like mine. I like nice round numbers and,
Well, mine are really round,
No, they're-
even more so than yours.
well, I like the fact that you've got 500,000 going forward for 6 years. I think that's a,
Well, we've got 550,000 going forward.
well,
for
anyway, we can,
The four.
we can put it to a vote.
So I'm sorry, Jim, I must have missed the last one. So you're proposing 150, 150, 150, 300,000, 500,000, and then
For
for
500,000
for 2030.
for 2030. That, in my world, that comes out to 1,750,000.
So his proposal would be for 2025 to add 150,000. 2026 to add 150,000. 2027 to add 150,000. 2028 to add 300,000. 2029 to add 500,000. And 2030 to add 500,000, which would bring each year to $500,000
Correct.
of an offset.
And then the balance, which I think is around $429,935 would go to increase our capital reserve.
Do we want to be out 6 years? I mean, last year we did 5, and we thought that was a lot.
I think given the size of this surplus, I think it makes sense.
I mean, the only thing I would advise is obviously we never want to see a cliff, right? So it's, at some point,
That's why I put less in the last year.
I mean, at some point, there's gonna be a cliff. Because hopefully we're getting tighter and tighter on our budgets, but.
This way, if you've got surpluses in the future years, you can reach it out beyond.
Well, that's what I was thinking. If you got 100,000 one year, you can put it in there. And the next year, if you got 100,000, you can add it to that year. As you get closer,
But I think stretching it out longer than this is, at this stage is. Doesn't make sense of-
I mean, it's fair to say taxes are probably gonna continue to go up
My budget's gonna be-
continuously.
Just so I can understand the 2 million unassigned that is being applied to each of the years, that was unexpectedly large in part because of the budgeting errors from prior years.
Or
So as we're thinking.
In large part,
In large part.
Mhm.
So as we're thinking about planning, again, we don't want to set up expectations that the budget can be functional without that amount of money since that. would-
no, and that should be explained to people. It's a good news, bad news. In other words, you folks, you prepaid
Yes,
taxes essentially.
yeah,
Now you're gonna have a credit going forward, so.
yeah.
It's,
It's more complicated than that because really the state prepaid.
no, that's true. I didn't want to get into that.
We actually get more from the state than we put in.
Yep, correct.
But yes, that's what
We'll have to leave that out.
makes people's brains explode.
Yeah, Jim, I understand you're wanting a round figure. What I was trying to do was say that, okay, our increase is 550,000, so I was trying to bring it up to that.
I
so
heard
that
you. I heard
I
what you
could
said.
say the,
I just like money back.
all right,
Simple as
so
that.
it's up to our members which way they like better.
I really don't have the numbers kind of like round numbers. That's usually my line. As an English major, I like round numbers. It's easier to work with. in my head, so.
550.
I appreciate round
No
numbers.
sense in that.
Well, 150,000 isn't a round number, whereas 200,000 is, so whichever way. All right, so since mine was the second one, and I was amending his, mine was, and we'll vote on that first and then go to the other. 200,000 for 25, 2025, 200,000 for 2026, 200,000 for 2027, 350,000 for 2028, 350,000 for 2029, And that puts 879,935 in for the capital reserve fund. So, let's. Do you want individual votes or you want?
I'm on the fence, I don't know which is better.
So the big difference in the two proposals, Bill, that I see, so correct me here, I mean, it's other people, is one, you're putting $500,000 in Jigs's proposal. You're putting $500,000 into 2023 to offset taxes in 2023. And then that $500,000 essentially is reducing then how much you're putting into capital reserves.
And Priscilla is
And-
adjusting 300, correct?
And Priscilla, in her whole thing is not, she's not proposing a 2030 set aside.
Right,
And
there's
she's-
6 years out. I feel 6 years is a little too long.
And she is proposing putting more dollars into capital reserve because of that.
Because our capital, if we have a boiler that goes, for example, at Central, which is getting old, we're gonna have to put money in, take care of that. We may, depending upon what comes out of ESSER, we may end up having to pay for some of those things like the roofs and those kinds of things, which is gonna be a good amount. I wanna have a really good amount in the capital reserve. We were talking about doing the auditorium here at the middle school. To do that, we would have to
Again?
take that out of capital reserve. I
Again?
don't want to have to go to a bond.
That's the high school.
All right, thank you. I thought Priscilla said middle school.
You've
No, we
already
don't.
done a video.
So
We
there
already
has
have a
been,
video.
there has been discussion to do the auditorium here,
That's what I'm talking about here.
but the auditorium here wouldn't be eligible for ESSER related reasons. And so, like, because it's lighting and replacing seats.
So the roof of the school wasn't replaced when they did the modernization.
Part of what.
Part of it was, we have one proposal in right now, one bid proposal in for the roof, to be done under ESSER. We're waiting on a second proposal at this time.
So it's the old roof that was not addressed when the school was addressed that is causing problems.
So what I've asked, the bid that we have out right now is to replace the entire roof, not just patch it. And
Right,
do a
but
certain part. So
I want to understand the history here. So the part of the roof that is giving us trouble now was the part of the roof that was not addressed when the building went through renovations. Is that right? When they
actually,
renovated this building, they did not address that part of the roof.
so I'm not aware of roof problems as per se, like leaking and whatnot. It's
Yeah.
just that parts were done. The whole roof wasn't done during the renovation part, only parts were. So there is a part that is at it's lived its life and it needs to be replaced. And so instead of just replacing that one piece, I want to replace the entire roof so that we don't have to constantly piecemeal it out.
What's the roof warranty? 20 years, 30 years? I'm curious.
I don't know what it is, but usually the membranes are 20-year roofs.
Okay, thank you.
So, and just to help you a little bit in the history, so remember, when you have a bond vote, there's a budget for that. And as I recall, the replacement of the roof is going to be $200,000. And so the judgment at the time was, well, it's okay, but it may need to be replaced eventually. But it was a way we could not.
And how, what was this, 5 years ago?
Well, it was 2013,
This will say 15.
About 10 years.
almost 10 years.
10.5 million.
And then the
And
other,
we got the first vote was,
down,
so we were,
was your vote, right?
yeah, I know, I voted for it.
Oh,
Chris and I were both here.
We did come in.
We did, we were like,
my only question before we actually.
we
vote.
have $1 million in the capital reserve already. Just kind of let you know.
With Jim's proposal, we would be putting 500,000 from the surplus into 24 budget, to offset an increase, correct?
No. What I said is that I would take this SU surplus
Yes.
and apply it to the 24 budget.
All right, 500.
No, I think that.
We don't know what that
We don't know
number
what
is
it
yet.
is, but it sounds like it'd be between 200 and 300 is a possibility.
All right, so you didn't give that. So what's the 500 figure coming from? I thought I
So
heard you
It's,
say,
it's 150, 150, 150, 300, 500, and 500.
I thought the figure was 500 for the coming fiscal year.
No.
I didn't.
No,
Last year,
25. 26, 27.
Yeah, I have those down. But what was your figure for 24?
Nothing, nothing out of this surplus.
So-
All right.
so Bill, I'm sorry. So last year, there was an article to put $350,000 from the prior surplus towards FY 24. So that is on that page 87. You'll see that reflected on page 87 online. Yeah, maybe not on 87. We never said that. Apologize. What page? is that?
86.
It's
On
on
page
86.
on page 86 on page 2, there's $350,000 already that's coming off of FY 24 from last year's vote. Once we have the numbers,
Coming off of FY 24?
No.
well, it'll reduce the taxes, but
it's-
it doesn't reduce what we're trying to appropriate or to expend.
No, but that 350 is going to alleviate the $548,000 increase?
Yeah, in a sense.
In a way, yeah. It's going to
Or
go.
would that
against our
increase have
total.
been
That's cooked in.
548 plus 350? Have we already figured in the
No.
350?
No.
I thought so.
And then,
And keep in mind, we've got 350 from last year's surplus, and if we apply the SU surplus, that'd be another 250 to 300 off the 2024 budget, okay?
But what we're talking about in this vote, Bill, is 2025, which is why I came up with 550,000, because the increase this year was 550,000. So I was figuring if I did that each of those years, I was looking at what we'd increased it this year. That doesn't mean it won't increase more next year, but at least I was offsetting what it was already increasing.
All right, so Jim is saying 150, 150, 150, 300, 500, and 500. And Priscilla, you're saying what
I'm
for
saying
25?
200,
200, 430 into the capital reserve.
and so the difference really comes down to $50,000 between the two proposals per year up until 2029, where the difference is $150,000 between those two proposals.
150 and 500 for the following.
Right,
years.
and 500 for the following year.
600.
We're out. There's nothing left for 30. So we're taking a 6-year plan and we're increasing so that it's a 5-year plan.
Well, I'm suggesting a 6-year plan.
All right, that's what I'm, okay, that's trying to think what's the advantage here between the two plans, so I think I'm okay.
Right, so
Someone else talk.
I was looking at 5 years, because after 5 years, you're going to have other money, hopefully from other years maybe, or if not, at least you've got some there and you're not looking at a huge cliff at the end, because you've got that huge amount for the next year. I've got some in there, but not as much. And I was doing more in capital reserves, figuring everything is going to cost us more money to replace these things. So I was putting a lot of money in there. Yes, we've got a nice, good capital reserve.
Right, inflation
So-
of what, 8.5% now?
Yes. So that's why I did it, but
Okay.
I mean, I think either plan either plan will work depending upon what our board decides to do. Okay, let's put it that way. So, Chris.
I don't. have a strong opinion about either proposing that we put something in that last year. This,
The 5th year. Well, I did the 5th year. But
some-
you want a
I want to
6th
go
year?
back to that SU surplus one more time. I'm sorry to do this.
That's okay.
So yes, the voters don't have to approve receiving the surplus from the SU budget. So let's say tomorrow, the auditors say, yes, you have a surplus of whatever it is. And you can allocate it against the assessments, current year assessments.
No, I would not.
You would allocate it against next year's assessment.
I would try to return it back to the districts.
Right, well, that's what don't you do it by not billing the districts for their assessments, or would you do a separate entry?
You know, let me just say, I was asked that from Jim on the, see, we're billing right now, we're assessing for the prepayment.
Sure, everything.
So, and wasn't it, Jim, did you say that?
No,
Stop, okay, Priscilla, sorry, Jim. So Priscilla said, you shouldn't be billing for that. And she's
And
right in a way,
But I understand where you're coming from.
yeah,
too, Jim.
yeah, so I'm just trying to keep things as absolutely clean as possible so that when I'm dead and gone, somebody will say, that's the cutoff, and he returned that amount of money. And that's what I was trying to do, is not, even not crank it through the assessment piece, but return it wholly and saying this was the surplus, your percentage, and this shows up as revenue. This will show up as revenue in your revenue sheet.
For this year.
Yes,
For 2024.
2024,
23.
23.
4.
Well,
No, because he's returning it now. It's
if
revenue.
it's gonna be 24.
Because
If
let me
you
run it
want to
by-
allocate some more money to offset this year's budget, then you're gonna have to do it as a bargain, because you can't.
23 is basically in the wood.
I get you.
Okay. For example, I remember back a ways, we had a deficit. Okay. The WNSU assessments were insufficient. Okay, and we had to come up, each district or town had to come up with that, and they did it in the following year's budget. Okay, in other words, in this case, if 2022 was a negative, since 2023 is already done, the first thing we do on the 2024 budget is to fund that deficit. We'd have to put that, we'd have to create availability of funds for that deficit. And this is just a surplus instead of a deficit. And so you don't muck with the 23, that's in the wood, just like the, they were supposed to take the early education
right.
Funds out of the Medicaid. They forgot to do that, or they didn't do that. So we're paying the allocation this year, but that means that the surplus will be bigger as we start 2024.
Well, unless they reduce them down in the German account, which is another thing.
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah, I don't know. I mean,
That would play it.
yeah,
That
but I think in terms of, keep in mind, what if it was a deficit? You couldn't fund it in the current year.
Holds over 2 years, really.
It really goes over 2 years.
Yeah.
So,
So-
and like I say, that's why, knowing we've got that something as a surplus, and probably more than just something, it's going to be a nice offset to the 2024 increase that our taxpayers are going to have to face. Maybe it might eliminate it. And we're in good shape, for the future.
Well, so if that's the case, then why would we allocate some of this surplus? Which will be around to be surplus in a couple of years. To this current budget that we're working with.
Well, we've done 350, and if we have another 250. You're gonna be up to 600,000. I think, I think the. Part of this is to set expectations for the future too.
And your proposal for 2024 was to put how much in?
None of this 2022 surplus would I put into 2024.
So did you have any?
No, because.
No,
because
she
we've already-
did.
The budget already set there and the figures set,
Well,
so.
I don't know why we wouldn't ask the taxpayers to.
So if I may,
I don't know.
Chunk of this.
But we got this 225,000 from the WA this year.
We won't have that for 2 years. I mean, that's not gonna percolate down to that.
so.
No, it's gonna percolate right into 2024.
So I've already emailed our attorney to ask if that can happen. But under the statute, under a surplus, it reads, if an audit reveals that a school district has a surplus fund, the school board shall carry the funds into the next year as revenue unless authorized by the voters at an annual or special meeting warrant for the purpose to deposit the funds into a reserve fund or use the funds for a specific purpose.
And that's what we're doing with this.
Right, no, I understand that,
Yeah.
so, from what I can see, there's nothing about like, you have monies right now. What do you do with it? Because usually it's all found in an.
Anyway, I think we're making it more complicated. I think that,
Probably am.
I mean, so
if
you-
we're already given 350 for last year and we've got another 250 coming in, 600,000.
But that isn't, that 250 isn't gonna affect the tax rate.
Yes, it is.
No,
No, it's coming carried in as revenue.
it's gonna carry in the revenue into the.
That's what it
next
is.
year.
Andy, that's what you just read, right?
So, I mean, one of the things you could do is table this and wait for the attorney and wait for the audit and then decide, and then hold a special meeting and then warn your articles.
Yeah.
I
Without
think
knowing
that's
that.
probably the best
So,
thing to
I
do.
mean, given the fact that there's some uncertainty around this, that would be my recommendation to you. Unless, I mean, you're comfortable, because we're talking $250,000 of seeing kind of rolling the dice on it, and that's how I feel like, because I can't give you a solid answer. That's.
My feeling is my understanding is that money, that WNSU money, has to be utilized. And it would be a revenue source in the 2024 budget.
Jim, the only thing I can say is I think it's complicated because I think there's carryover, not only from 22. And again, I want to have the auditor tell me
Yeah.
that
No, I
what
think that
that
makes sense.
what that balance comprises of. Just don't know.
So my recommendation to you would be to table this, which would allow you to kind of percolate on the two proposals for the warrants, but also that if we could, we're talking a special meeting, we probably have to try and do something like, if we're talking a couple of days, it's Tuesday, we're talking, Thursday, Friday, and maybe something in the middle of the day kind of thing, just because other districts have meetings already scheduled.
That's fine.
I mean, the only other thing we could do is to deal with this amount and do my proposal and then save whatever there is from the surplus from that and use it as your 6th year. That's a possibility too, Jace.
I don't like your proposal.
Okay. I just like mine. Okay. All
So.
right. Okay.
What's
I'm gonna
next?
move we table.
Okay. So we moved it, was tabled, on favor tabling it. I'm not gonna keep that to go in or not, but are we all Agree to that? Okay, all right. So, tuition rate. Andy, did you have a recommendation on that?
Yeah, so Jim and I are recommending a tuition rate of 21,000.
And that includes the debt service. Right?
Yes. Yes, that does.
I'll make a motion to approve the tuition rate of 21,000.
What grades is that?
Let's, and I looked at the middle school.
Kindergarten through
And
eight,
yes,
right?
I think it's the same.
it's the same.
Yeah.
And it came out in. That's, for each, we put going on it.
I do have one question on that. But did we have a motion? You had a motion, Jim, right? Thank you, Jiz. Appreciate that. On the last sheet, page 87, it shows ed spending per equalized student of $19,344.85. 21,000 would be more than that. The equalized for pupil spending. I don't think we can do that. Is that going to cause a problem?
I don't
Why
think
is
so,
that?
because when I looked at the middle school, grades 5 and 6. And split the costs. With the number of students in 5 and 6 and the number of students in 7 and 8. It came out very close to the same. Now, 5 and 6 is considered elementary too. Understanding that Central has a different figure, Saxon's River has a different figure. I, wanted to make sure if you did have any tuition 5th or 6th grade, that you received the appropriate amount of money for the cost. That's all. That's all I was trying to do.
And I appreciate that. I just
Well,
know
keep in
that
mind-
legislature statutes say you can't have it higher than the.
Yeah, but Priscilla,
equalized
let me just
pupil.
interject. The state sets the number of students, okay? We count the number of students. Okay, the number that they tell us is different than the real number. Okay, so we're looking at our budget and the number of kids, and that's how we spend up the numbers. I mean, the cost per pupil, if you look at the actual number of kids, I think it ranges, Jim, from 23 something at Saxon's River to
Yes.
21,000 at Central and 21,000 at the middle school. It's a little higher at Saxon's River because it's such a big building.
I did email Rachel Stanger to see what she recommended.
Okay.
And she says, I don't have any recommendation.
Okay.
We've
I
got
just
a
wanted,
recommendation.
I just hadn't noticed this until I sat here and I was
But thank you.
concerned that,
Yep.
knowing the statute says we can only set it as high as that, I didn't know how that impacted.
And I
And
thank
I
you
kind
for-
of whispered that to Andy, but
Yep. No, thank you for recognizing that. I will say with the tuition law, we will never make any additional monies. If you said, look, charge 40,000 a piece. At the end of the year, when we do a true up, you would have to
You have to
return
give it back.
the monies that you got extra. So you'll never get more than the cost of your educational system. Thank you for looking at that.
and you were pointing out the three ones. Is it different on that sheet? The 3 years where you have to do equalized student, is it different on that sheet?
Well, no, but it's just the taxes. They send out that sheet as a requirement to be posted with your stuff, and I mean, they do an insufficient job for clarifying the taxation that property tax people are gonna have to pay. I'm not comfortable with that 3-year piece that is required.
And just last year's set tax rate that was. I'm looking this up right now, announced for this year is 20,811.
Okay,
We are 72 dollars higher.
That's right.
okay. So, Bill,
Jim mentioned 21,000 for the tuition rate, and that covers debt. What did you mean by that?
Well, our three buildings, we renovated them, so we had borrowings. Okay, so I wanted to be sure that the debt service is included as one of the expenses when you calculate the.
Okay.
And it is a choice in the calculation.
Yes.
You can do it without
Do it
that
with.
service or with.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
okay, so is there any other discussion or we have a motion on the floor? Okay, so just let's vote by acclamation. We have Jim made the motion that the tuition rate be set at 21,000. How do you vote? Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. All right, the next two, E and F, are in executive session. So do you want to do executive session before the salary ranges? Do you want to just comment on those quickly?
I'd like to do those in the executive
An
session.
exec session, okay. And the timeline, the principal search can also be, we can cover that because that's a contract issue. So I would entertain a motion.
So I had one question for Andy's superintendent report. We went through the three principal reports, but I just had a quick question.
Okay,
Andy, you mentioned in your report that Cognia is replacing, how do you say that acronym? SBAC?
SBAC. It's
As
part
an
of balance.
assessment tool.
Yeah.
And this is for a state mandated change in the
Correct.
assessment. If it's gonna be causing difficulty for students because it's a different format, what's the compelling reason for changing our way of assessing the students?
I can't answer that question because that was something that we received from the state, that it was a state bid that the state put out. And they got a new contractor for a new test. I had a meeting with superintendents in our regional area. A superintendent that just came here from a neighboring district is familiar with Cognia. And discussed how it is the test is much more language-based and much more demanding as a language-based assessment. And so therefore, it is very different from SBAC. And so her experience from a state that had SBAC that went to Cognia was in that first year. Students really struggled because not that we teach to the test, but you teach in a certain manner, knowing what the assessment is. And because you use those sample assessments to work with students. And if you've been going left and all of a sudden you've got to make that little bit of a turn to the right, it's predictable that students will not perform as well because the test has changed.
Well, I question the planning of this after 2 years of COVID mandated requirements that have had a severe impact on learning. I think this is poorly timed. I'm just saying it for the record. Have our principals been given a preview of this testing, this new testing?
So there was a mandatory training that some data folks had to go to that the information, the feedback I got was not very well planned. And I think they're going to open some stuff up for people to look at pretty soon, I heard. But we haven't gotten a lot of stuff from the state.
I would voice concerns.
The superintendents have voiced their concerns to the AOE.
Because I don't think this is fair to the students. I don't think this is fair to the staff that is working with our students. especially after 2 years of compromise learning. Thank you.
I would add to that, Bill, I don't think it's fair to the school boards either, because we're trying to look at the progress that our students are making and see how well
Yeah.
our schools are doing. So it's really hard for us to judge and come up with,
It's
you know,
gonna be
an
very
ana-
difficult to
analysis
see
of it.
where we're advancing and where we're falling behind.
I think I read it in the news, they are trying to do a crosswalk between the assessment results. I mean, there will be some attempt at least to make it.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in other states where we went from, you know, what were at the time called NEAPs, the New Hampshire, and then it became the kneecaps, then it was New England, and then SBAC, and we crosswalked each time,
Yeah.
and we always found, and yes, you always saw a nice dip as kids did, and then as instruction changed and adjusted, you saw the increase. So, yeah. But we know it'll be a struggle, and we definitely do not feel that we as a supervisory union are prepared for this assessment, but
Well, somebody needs to hear that and
We're not being given any choice, right?
no, we don't have an opt-out system.
We opted out of it. And, you find it, so
Okay. Can
we can't opt out of this.
I have a motion to enter into executive session to discuss a personnel matter and contracts where premature public knowledge could place the board and or the individual at a disadvantage?
So moved.
Okay, Jim McCullough motion.
Recording stopped.
At 6:38 to discuss a personnel matter where premature public knowledge could place the board and or the individual at a disadvantage. How do you vote? And invite the superintendent.
thank you, Jim.
All right,
Aye.
thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Laura, thanks, Gary.
Principals, we appreciate all of your time and all of your efforts.
Just give me 1 second. Oh, sorry.
You may practice.
Well, you're out now.
Okay, we're out. So go ahead. We're coming out of the session at 6:10. Do we have a motion?
I move that the board accept the principal contract as prepared by our superintendent.
Okay. Bill Morse made the motion to approve the contract as negotiated by the superintendent for the contract for the interim principal
Yes.
as negotiated by the superintendent. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, so that passed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Director's comments, Jake,
I'm good.
Bill,
I'm good as well.
Chris,
I hate to be a curmudgeon, but I'm gonna. My understanding is that schools are not supposed to promote one religion over another. That is in Vermont.
I would hope.
It's hard for me to walk into that lobby and not see that as promoting Christianity. I think people of other religions, and there are many in our community, and presumably many of them are our students, might be uncomfortable with that, and I don't understand why it's being allowed to be in this public space.
thank you, Chris. Caitlin,
I'm good, thank you.
okay, and I would just say, I appreciate everything that every one of you does, and all of us working together. I'm looking for a really successful finalization of everything that we need to do for the warnings and everything else. So, next meeting will be, will have to be a special meeting to complete the warrants. And we'll wait for the information so that we can do that and we'll let you know when that.
What's the date, Priscilla?
We don't know
We
yet.
don't have a date for that. That's why I didn't give one. 24 hours notice, basically for special meeting as soon as we can. Hopefully this week we have a little bit of flexibility because it's later this year. The town meeting is later, so we have a little bit of flexibility, but we're getting close to the deadlines for getting them. Okay.
You sure, Andy, you sure have the, what the current capital reserve is?
Yeah, it would be great to just kind of have all these figures.
Right.
And those figures and proposals.
Okay.
The other
We'll
thing
list
too
the
is,
two, we'll get the two out there so that the board can see them.
And then there's the other question.
The rest of it and find out the other information.
for future reference, if the, well, first of all, these budget surpluses they're not going to continue. I mean, not the way we're doing budgets. And so, so it's not, I wish it was a continuing problem, but I think, having your recommendation or yours and Jim's recommendation, Andy, would also be not a bad thing either. So,
Yeah, no, I
on these things, and, doesn't have to be the free for all that I've made.
no, and I'll come back with some recommendations as well. Are we adjourned?
We're adjourned at 6:15.